Let's move directly now to our top story. So Keir Starmer has accused the Tory Party of sitting on their hands over the allegations against the MP Mark Menzies. Mr Menzies lost the Conservative whip and was suspended as one of Rishi Sunak's trade envoys after the Times published claims that he used political donations to pay off, and I quote, and I keep having to say this, and each time I feel about 7 years old, bad people who had locked him in a flat and demanded thousands of pounds for his release. It's understood the party has known about this for months, but they've only just launched an investigation into it. The Labour leader says there are serious questions that need to be answered.
Well, in the last 24 hours, we've found out that the government was told months ago about this, and they seem to have sat on their hands. If they thought they could sweep this under the carpet somehow, they were obviously very, very mistaken, and that's why I think there are very serious questions now that need to be answered, not just by the individual, but also by the government on this. And Annalisa Dodds has written to the police because it's clearly a matter that they are going to want to look into.
Just a reminder that Mark Menzies denies the allegations. Joining me in the studio now, former aide Jeremy Corbyn, James Schneider, good to see you, James, and Charlie Rowley, the former advisor to Michael Gove. Good to have you both here. Keir Starmer's acting, James, as if something important and pivotal has occurred in the last 24 hours. But has it really, or is this pretty much exactly what we knew at this time yesterday, no more, no less?
Well, I think him being referred to the police is, I suppose, a step in the story. But, I mean, the main question seems to be either this MP was in a terrible situation and needed support because he was being locked in a flat and whatever, who knows what the situation was, or he's done something very wrong and that should have been investigated. So it does seem like either way, the Conservative Party should have done something, should have got some other authorities involved.
But just positing the theory that one is locked in a flat by bad people, doesn't one try to phone somebody, or rather not for money, but to call the police? Don't you say, hello, I've been locked in a flat by bad people and I need you to get me out, get the police to come and get me out? You don't phone a 78-year-old former employee and say, come with cash in a brown paper envelope because bad people have locked me in this building, do you?
No, I'm trying to be as generous as possible.
I know you're doing a beautiful job.
I'm saying basically either way you look at it, if you want to be as generous as you possibly can be to him, then they should have involved some other authorities because he was being, held hostage or whatever. And if it's not that, because that does stretch credulity somewhat, as you suggested, then you should also be involving the authorities. So I think that's the basic takeaway. Whether Keir Starmer says that or not really is neither here nor there. That is an obvious thing which anybody can see.
I mean, does quite a lot of this, Charlie, pertain to the notion of allowing yourself to pitch up ultimately in an unknown flat with these dark forces of the night, these bad people who, when you won't do what they want you to do, or when you have done too much of what you wish you hadn't done, or when you have, some people have alleged, vomited copiously all over everything and won't give them the money they say they need, thousands and thousands of pounds to rectify the damage caused by your projectile vomiting. When all of this happens, you have to call an old lady in the middle of the night and get her to come and give you a whole lot of money that isn't actually yours and isn't really hers. Is this a judgment thing rather than a particular details thing?
I think so, because it kind of goes back to the previous sort of scandal that we were talking about, where an MP was sort of trading images on a dating app, but in order to curtail or contain any embarrassment or public exposure, he is then involved in giving out other people's numbers. In this case, I think to try and curtail and contain the embarrassment of what clearly is a meet-up on a dating app. That's what's been reported.
Yes.
Something has obviously gone quite awry to be locked up by bad people at the end of the night. I mean, some people might just turn up for that. I mean, you never know.
That delightful MP who was looking for badgers. Do you remember that one?
Yes.
That wasn't the tractor one.
No, that wasn't looking at porn and saying it was tractors. No, this was looking for badgers on, was it Clapham Common?
Ron Davies. Was it Ron Davies?
Yes. Was that badger? He was just searching for badgers, wasn't he?
Was it badgers?
It was badgers.
He was
made
definitely
on him.
having a stroll, and there was his moment of madness, is what he called it. His moment of madness on
moment
Clapham
of-
Common. Yeah.
And
Madness, yes.
And this could be similar to that. But the seriousness of it is that obviously, you know, having to call someone a party worker in the middle of the night to front up cash, cash that would either have been, or, you know, we're not quite sure where it's registered, whether it's registered actually within party funding for that particular constituency, or whether it was a separate pot of money that had been raised through a business group that was going to fund his campaign. Either way, it does need to be looked into. The party is looking into it. I don't think, as Sir Keir Starmer said there, that the government has sat on it. I don't think the government would have been aware. I know that sounds a bit,
Letting them off
Didn't
the
she
hook.
say she told the whips? I mean, the whips are the government.
Well, I think, you know, the government, as in, you know, Rishi Sunak would not be sort of, you know, flicking through his papers in his red box at night thinking, aha, I've got a file on Mark Menzies. You know, what's this about? Why is, you know, let's just put this under the carpet.
I talked to you about blackmailing. I'm not saying this is what has happened, but it might be, or the possibility of blackmail, or the fear of being blackmailed if you're an MP. What all that's about, because you might think in this day and age, you know, people are entitled to whatever kind of sex life they like, whatever romantic life they like, whatever sexual orientation they like, and quite rightly so. You know, they're allowed to do whatever they want to do, and I don't think people expect MPs like the priesthood in some religions to be celibate. Nobody thinks that MPs aren't having sex. They try not to think about it too much, but if forced to think about it, they have to acknowledge they're having sex or sexual congress of some kind. So, you know, imagine if Mark Menzies had been hooking up on some dating site, and imagine he had ended up with bad people rather than the sexually alluring people he hoped he might end up with. Let's just imagine that. And imagine, you know, somebody said, well, we're going to blackmail you and tell people that you were in this hookup joint or whatever it was. And he said, OK, well, tell them then. He's single. It's not as if he's being, you know, betraying his wife and 18 children. He's not. Why didn't he just say, I don't care, tell them, do whatever you want. I'm not trying to pretend I'm not in this dating situation.
I think quite a lot of MPs have quite an outsized idea of their own importance and relevance in the world, and therefore might think that it's a much bigger scandal than it would be, rather than, you know, local paper covers, you know, local MP that no one in the country outside that constituency had heard of until this comes out, says, oh, I was doing this and these people tried to blackmail me, and everyone will go, oh, well, you know, poor you, if that's what happened in this particular
exactly.
case.
Or even, oh, lucky you, if it were a more fortuitous situation.
Right, yeah.
Whatever became of the Keith Vaz story?
Well, quite, and it shows that.
I mean, what did become of that?
Well,
He came back to Parliament and got on with it, I think.
No one seemed to care less, really. I mean, it was quite titillating at the time, but it didn't seem to last very long, did it?
Yeah, I mean, he lost his, I think, role as chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee because of the involvement of drugs that was used, and, you know, rightly so, as you'd expect. But
I mean, he wasn't put in the stocks, he wasn't sent fleeing from the country, he was just kind of reaccommodated, wasn't he?
Sure, and I think if you just take people's individual characters, so, you know, not alleging any kind of, you know, illegal things that have happened, but if it's Boris Johnson, for example, you know, someone who has had a very colourful past, a very colourful sex life, by the sounds of things, but because people know about that, you price it into the individual, because, you know, whatever you think about Boris Johnson, we know him, he is who he is, you know, he is exactly what you get on the tin.
Rabelaisian character, Falstaffian in his proclivities, absolutely.
But when you sort of, you know, if you try and, I think, if you're not authentic as an MP, if you try and present yourself as something other than what you are, it's then always the cover-up that gets you, rather than being able to front it.
So let's imagine you are an MP, or let's imagine you're a new MP. Who are the chaps or lasses who come and give you some heads-ups on this kind of thing and say, look, you know, you're going to be an MP, watch out for this, look out for that, you don't put yourself in a position of this or that, but if you do, ameliorate it immediately by telling the truth, don't try and, you know, be a hypocrite, don't get in on a ticket which isn't who you are at all. You know, that kind of thing. Where's the bit where they, you know, the sort of old girl and old boy of the class come and give you a bit of information and so you don't make a terrible mess of it?
There's actually really no structured way for new MPs to get the sorts of information they need, including things like how you run an office, how you're meant to operate with staff, how you're meant to deal with the press, as well as everything else. There really isn't that much that they get. Some people will be lucky. They'll be given an office next to somebody who happens to take them under their wing and tells them a bit about the ways of the world. But there isn't really a structure, and that's partly why we get a lot of scandals, especially to do with bullying and being poor managers and so on, because a lot of MPs really have not been in situations like these.
So is that a mistake? I mean, ought there to be some kind of actual formal structure, which is, you know, you have a... I remember when people showed up at Cambridge, you were given a college mummy and a college daddy, which just meant someone who's older than you, who was an undergraduate, who would sort of talk you through and help you out and make sure you didn't get into terrible trouble. I mean, don't they need to have some kind of infrastructure to stop people making a real mess of it?
Yeah, I think they probably do. And you know, Westminster is always probably looking at ways in which it can try and help and mentor people. But at the end of the day, you know, those 650 MPs are all individuals. They are all individual sort of businesses in their own sense. They run their own diaries, they hire their own teams, they have, you know, their own salary structures. You can, depending on how many people you can employ or not within the budget that you're allocated. And it, you know, with your own diary, I think, and depending on your, you know, state of mind and your character, you know, with the late night voting, with the, you know, the access to alcohol and lobbying, and, you know, the days can be absolutely full on, but you can get a barrage of abuse, but you can feel this element of self-importance. When you get a bit lonely and you turn to the booze, or you turn to the drink, or if you are single and you start going on apps, you can find yourself maybe in a little bit of hot water at times. But, you know, that's just the welfare that needs to be considered with individuals.
Show them how to deal with it so that it isn't maximum embarrassment for them and also for the party. So people have said, James, things about, you know, comparisons with John Major's Tory Party riddled with scandal, the higher the brow, the lower the loins, and all of that kind of a thing. Would you say that comparisons are deserved at this point?
I think we're definitely getting there. I think the most egregious scandals of the late Major period are probably more salacious and more sort of brown paper envelope.
Which are you thinking of?
Type things. There was the cash for questions is an actual cash in brown envelopes to ask questions.
You mean the Hamiltons?
Yeah, very, very low grade. There was the MP for Portsmouth South who died in...
Stephen Norris?
No. He I can't remember his name. He was Portsmouth South, I think it was in 1994.
Right.
It was, what's the way to say it? Similar to Michael Hutchins in
how
that
that's
came
asphyxiation thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
That one.
Yes.
But then there are a lot here. There's the MP who was shilling for the gambling lobby. I mean, there's a lot. There's been a...
There is a lot.
There's a lot of it around.
And Charlie, would it be fair to say predominance of that kind of conduct on the right of the House rather than the left for some reason? Why is that?
Well, whilst you've been going to bed reading up on your Tory scandals of the 90s...
I haven't. These are childhood memories. These are childhood memories.
I was far too young. I was far too young.
I came straight through with Stephen Norris. For God's sake.
You know, it's sweet nothings whispering into my ear in the night. None of this salacious nonsense. But, yeah, I mean, look, it's not good doing. There's a by-election taking place in Blackpool South because of
that was the gambling one, yeah.
Cash for sort of questions, cash for access. You know, you've got the Will Rag stuff going on. You've got now this with Mark Menzies. I mean, it must be a total headache for Number 10, who are trying to, whatever you think about what they're doing, or whatever you think about their policies, they've obviously got to try and articulate what they're doing and the success of the government, whatever it is, and whatever they say it will be. But they can't lose a single day, a single second with these headlines distracting from what Rishi Sunak wants to be able to present
let's
to the
talk
country.
about the fact that 100 MPs are to stand down at the next election. Now, does that mean that they are putting themselves first, that this is an example of kind of self-serving, even self-saving behaviour? Get yourself out quickly so that you're not there when the debacle comes, do a bit of fiddling before Rome burns, but get out before the bonfire. Is it that kind of thing, or what's actually happening here?
No, I think MPs are entitled to not stand again if they don't want to stand again, especially if they think they're going to get thwacking, which you can see if you look at the polls. There are a lot of Tory MPs that would have felt very comfortable in their seats for perhaps many years and now think that they could lose, and there are other things that they could be doing with their lives. So I think in the big elections in 2010, in 1997, and likely the one this year, you get very big turnover and people jump at the end. And then surprising ones also lose their seats.
Yes. Let's talk about Nicola Sturgeon and most particularly her husband. Former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has described allegations that her husband embezzled funds from the SNP as, and I quote, incredibly difficult. Peter Murrell, a former chief exec of the party, was arrested and charged by police on Thursday. Humza Yousaf, the current First Minister, described the case as very serious and confirmed Mr Murrell's resigned his membership of the SNP. He spent 22 years as the party's chief exec. Gosh, he was questioned for 9 hours. We remember all the excitement last time. We remember the camper van. We remember those tents. It was all very spectacular. Then it all seemed to sort of die down a bit. Now, blimey, it's really sparked up again. No end, hasn't it?
Exactly so, and it's the second time he's been arrested, I think, and questioned and now charged, and so the case will have to be handed over to the Scottish sort of Crown Prosecution Service to see what they can bring against him. And it is about embezzlement. As you said, he's 20 years as chief executive. You know, this isn't someone who might have made a small mistake or an oversight. He's well experienced.
A lot of money as well,
about
money. £600,000.
Exactly, money that was earmarked as for the SNP to go and run a second independence campaign, but it seems to have been allegedly siphoned off into other means. And I do, I saw the clip of Nicola Sturgeon earlier on, who sort of said it was a very difficult day. And I can understand that, you know, because it's her husband and it's obviously very personal to her. But, you know, she was quite senior within the SNP herself for many years. She was the Deputy First Minister. She became First Minister for a number of years. You know, I don't think it would be beyond reason to suggest that she didn't know anything, perhaps, about what might have been happening. I don't think this is something out of the blue to her, so I don't know how it's that difficult. I'm sure there are more questions. Because she's been arrested herself by this. I'm sure she knows a bit more to it.
Is there any sense at all, James, that Nicola Sturgeon has often been a little on the priggish side, a little sanctimonious, a little self-righteous, and that this might be a big fat dent in that?
You mean in general terms or about this issue?
In general.
I don't know about I wouldn't necessarily say that in general terms. I saw the clip of her outside her house, and I think she's saying it's difficult because it's obviously difficult.
Well, embarrassing, isn't it?
Of course, yeah, of course it is. But she's not. I mean, she's also even still there, standing outside when her political career is over. Her husband is being questioned under caution or whatever exactly it is. She's still quite politically skilled and can control herself in front of the media. So she says difficult. Difficult means embarrassing, humiliating, etc. But you don't want to give people that quote. And then she says, can you please be careful about my neighbours because they don't want the intrusion, and then I'm just getting in the car and I only learnt to drive recently, so, you know, would you mind not trying to distract me? It was all still quite, you know, she still had some skill. I don't mean that necessarily in a positive sense, but she still knew what she was doing and was able to control herself and her emotions pretty effectively.
All right, but I mean, watch this space, right?
Yeah. No, this story is not going away.
No. Gentlemen, both, thank you very much indeed. Good to see you on the programme.